Hello, everybody. This is Speakeasy Hanoi, a podcast about Vietnam. My name is Edward. I'm the co-host,
My
and
name is Tian. I am very glad to be here and co-host this episode with Edward. Hello, Edward. Are
yeah,
you okay?
I'm fine. I'm doing good. And Tien, we're going to be talking today about the pandemic, the COVID pandemic that we've been living with for the last 2 years. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about experiences that we have had here in Vietnam. And I'm sure we'll also talk about the United States because I have many friends in the US and they tell me what is going on, and that's where I'm from. So we'll talk about that too. But it's been a very interesting 2 years, hasn't it?
Yeah. These 2 years has been very eventful, and for many of us are very hard um periods living with the pandemic all over the world,
Definitely.
especially in
And
the
you
US.
were, yeah, and you are in the medical sector. You
Yeah.
are a medical student and doing internships and working in hospitals.
Yes.
So I think
Uh,
that gives you a very, good position to talk about COVID here in Vietnam. So
yeah.
when did COVID start affecting our lives in Vietnam?
It was 2 years ago when Vietnam discovered the first cases that it is an imported case from Wuhan, China,
Hmm.
uh, and since then we have experienced four, four different waves of the pandemic. But we are switching from zero COVID policy to living with COVID, and
Hmm.
it has been a big change from the first way when the first 3 ways when we are successful at containing the spreading and bring the community spreading to zero. But
Right.
right now we decide to live with it.
Yeah, so
And
let's go back to 2 years ago, 2020.
yeah,
And
yeah,
because most of the world, I know the United States and Europe anyway, suffered a lot in 2020 with many cases, many deaths, and many people in the hospital. And here in Vietnam, except for a few weeks in the springtime, we had almost a normal year. And
yeah.
I think that's because the government and the Ministry of Health successfully kept the COVID counts down to almost zero, the zero
Yes,
COVID policy. So we had a very almost normal year in 2020, didn't we?
yes. We the year 2020 we are successful at acting quickly enough, and we were successful. And the community's transmission are kept at the zero. There is no sustainable community spreading,
Right.
which means that the disease is well contained, and the new cases only discovered from the imported cases from overseas.
Right. So
Yeah,
what did government in Vietnam do in 2020 that worked so well?
yeah. The first is we are aware of the disease that is spreading in the China, and then we act very fast because we are very cautious of how China media could play down the severity of the epidemic, and how we could act because we are very near from China, and such disease could be spreading very easily across the border. So we close the border and we survey systematically every citizen or every um, people who comes from Wuhan, and it is why we were successful at containing the disease. And secondly, when the disease is spreading to the US, to the Europe, we act very fast along with other countries like Japan or Taiwan. We close the border, and we
Mhm.
in April to 2020, and later in Da Nang in the summer of 2020. So it was a very quick reaction, uh, and also the people are very aware of the severity of the disease, of the fragility of the healthcare system. we cannot compare with other country like in Europe, like Germany or US. So overflown, and we could be get a lot of damages if we do not act fast. So it comes from both sides, from the people and also from the government.
Right,
And
right.
It is very.
I was for the entirety of the pandemic, up even like until now. I was very happy to be in Vietnam. It was I felt that like you said, the people, everybody understood the importance of the information from the government about what we should do and what we should not do was very, very clear, very, very easy to understand. And as a consequence, society in Vietnam in some ways became stronger and unified. Whereas in the United States, the opposite has happened. It's less unity. There's, still people in government who say, no, you don't have to wear a mask. Requiring a mask wearing is, irresponsible, and it should be an individual's choice whether they wear a mask or not. And different members of the government give conflicting information. And some people, we still hear from some people, oh, it's just like a flu, it's not a big deal. So, we had, whereas in the United States, it seems that the country is being torn apart, even now, into disunity. In Vietnam, even though we were all affected with lockdowns and different measures that were taken, I feel there's more unity here. That people, understand that we're all working together as opposed to, fighting each other. So in 2020, we had, except for a few weeks in the spring and a few weeks in Da Nang in the summertime, it was almost a normal year. Almost. I mean, it wasn't really normal because the borders were closed, so no tourists were allowed to come in. So of course, some sectors, were hit very hard, but more normal than life in many other countries, and that's because the government was successful at containing COVID for the first 3 waves. But then in 2021, something happened, didn't it?
Yeah, in 2021, something really happened. Firstly, it comes from overseas, the Alpha variant from the first discovered in the UK, and then we found it near the Lunar New Year last year, and it was spreading. And then we see after that we see a few cases with the Delta variant who comes from India or China, but the spreading was from a facility that he used for quarantine industrial area in the north, and it became a very big deal. Many people go ill, and there are people who die. And we are putting all your effort from all over the country to have the 2 party fish city from the north, and it seemed to be well controlled. But the spreading is discreetly come to the south, and it is where it hit the most because of the population and it is a very dynamic economic zone that when implementing the strict policy of quarantine and lockdown are less effective comparing with the less populous area. So it is where it's that, and with the Delta variant, the spreading speed are very fast, and thus we are not able to cope up with such a variant, and then the spreading was seems to be out of control.
Right. In the South, it seems that they had about 3 months of very severe lockdown, and here in Hanoi in the north, it was about 2 months, I think. And and during that time, then more people got vaccinated. Vaccines became available, and then that was, I think it was during the 4th wave that the government shifted from zero COVID to living with COVID.
But it is the lesson we learned after after month of a strict lockdown policy that begin to take effect on people's livelihood, and then we see that we cannot forsake completely the economy, and then we see that this wave is very difficult to be completely contained and controlled like the last wave, to living with COVID, but not with the pandemic.
Right.
With the pandemic.
There are some Westerners I know in Vietnam who seem to think that living with COVID is supposed to be just do what the United States is doing with almost no restrictions and just let COVID be. But that doesn't seem to be what the government here is doing. So living with COVID doesn't mean no restrictions.
Yeah, we ease the lockdown very slowly and steadily. So in order not to put more fuel for the pandemic to grow, but to ease enough for the economic activity to resume to some sort of new normal. But we can see children still are not allowed to come back to school, and
Right.
Many of the entertainment service are not allowed to reopen.
Yes, we still have some restrictions. For example, there aren't large gatherings, there aren't concerts and entertainment offerings. And in some neighborhoods, some restaurants might be restricted, but then in other neighborhoods they're open. So it just seems, but still, it seems to me that people are very supportive of it.
It is the truth that people in Vietnam are very aware of the disease of the pandemic, and then are mostly afraid to spread the disease or to be affected by the disease. So they are aware of the prevention measure, and they take it very seriously.
Now, in Vietnam, do you hear a lot of news reports about things that are happening in the United States regarding COVID?
I think we had a lot of news of what is happening in the US, because
but what do Vietnamese people think when they see Americans who don't want to wear masks?
I think at the beginning of the pandemic, it was a denying mindset growing inside America, and conflicting ideas, and mostly they were afraid for the economy, so afraid to put on the strict measure. They fear of limiting the human rights or affecting the economy. But for Vietnamese like us, I think that they care more about money and freedom of human or right of individual right, more than the health and the life of people.
That might be
what I cannot understand.
Yeah, that might be part of it, but I think a lot of it is when the Ministry of Health gives information to people, people trust it. Here in Vietnam, when the Ministry of Health, we get daily notices, we get daily information about the number of cases and the number of deaths, and by province and city, and it's good information. Everybody receives it, and everybody trusts it.
Yeah.
And in the United States, people do not trust the government. That's something that's a very big difference. There's, at least half of the people don't trust it, don't believe it. And so, yes, there's this notion about freedom and human rights, but for goodness sakes, it's just a mask on the face. It's not anything else, even that. So I don't completely buy that it's a freedom and human rights thing. I think that's a smokescreen. I think it's trust in the government. And the United States, people in the United States, many people do not trust the government. And they think that government is the problem. And here in Vietnam, especially when it comes to public health, I think most people do trust what the government is doing for public health. And I think that's the big difference.
Yeah. So why do you think that people in the US went against the recommendation and scientific facts and evidence regarding the
I don't know I don't know what to think. One part of it just embarrasses me, because many Vietnamese, when I first came to Vietnam, they had a very high opinion of the United States, that the United States was the leader in the world and was, generally, doing good things. And after COVID, I have a feeling that perception has changed a little bit. That, the number of deaths being so high, the pictures that we see on television, and sometimes even when I read news about, fights breaking out at a store because some people are not wearing a mask and other people are angry about that, and there's actual violence and sometimes shooting because there's an argument. Sometimes I think, oh, maybe that's just a news story that's being exaggerated because the news wants people to watch it and it's more entertaining to have a violent fight. But when I speak to my friends who are living in the United States, they say, well, no, the tension is real between people who do not want to get a vaccine and people who do, the people who don't wear a mask and the people who do. The political, it's a political divide as well. So the United States was a divided country even before. The Trump presidency divided people, pro-Trump and anti-Trump. And then COVID just made it worse. So it's not a good time. I'm very happy to be in Vietnam. I think there's a sense of unity and harmony, and I feel safer here. And I feel freer here because our safety is being taken care of. There's more being done to protect us. So I feel freer here than I would there. So I'm happy to be in Vietnam, and it just saddens me to see, what's happening. Although the country was divided even before COVID, but now it's become worse. So that's my feeling on it. I think, Vietnam we had a challenge in 2021 with the Delta variant, but even then the numbers when they were at their peak during the fourth wave were very little compared to what was happening in the United States when people were arguing for no restrictions and no masks and no vaccine mandates. And so we sense the urgency of it when the absolute numbers were still much lower than they were in the States. So
yeah. So
I don't know. We're not finished with COVID yet.
I remember.
And COVID isn't over, is it?
So. No, it is by far from being over.
Right.
But then I think that Vietnamese people are very aware that the news are showing constantly the cases that the severe cases, the touching stories from the epidemic, from the center of the epidemic, like in the Ho Chi Minh City back in the summer. So we are very aware of how COVID can kill, how it can tear apart families and make children become orphan. And we understand that, and we are very aware of the situation. But the same thing didn't happen in the U.S. Even though there are large truck piled up with the body bags, they are still become some kind of indifference and irresponsible toward the protection measure, and instead they are concentrating into doubting the policy of the government, doubting the evidence, and arguing instead of protecting each other and protecting the community.
Right. So anyway, so we're not finished with COVID yet, but what do we see happening now in Vietnam? We still have some cases. We still have some restrictions, but the border is beginning to open, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the border is beginning to open, and the policy for quarantine for overseas for overseas guests are being eased a little bit. If you are vaccinated,
Right.
you can be at your home to self quarantine at your home for a week or two. So
Right.
I think it is starting to become normal, and we are much more confident because we are vaccinated at least one dose for the nearly 100% of the population over 18 years old,
Right.
and that is our protection that can make us confident to implement some ease for the policy.
And that's a big thing because last year vaccines were slow to get to Vietnam, and I know that that's partly because the government was following zero COVID policies and hoping that that would work. But it was also because a lot of the rich countries of the world were keeping many of the vaccines for themselves. So there was some vaccine diplomacy, and some people call it vaccine imperialism. But when Vietnam began vaccinating people in late summer of last year, then it went very quickly. And I think right now, isn't Vietnam in the top 10 countries of the world in terms of vaccination rates in a very short amount of time?
Yes, yes, yes. And I think the part of the reason is because Vietnamese government are very aware of the vaccine, the importance of vaccination. So they putting all the resources to vaccinate people as fast as they can. And also Vietnam has also has a public health sector that are well developed and are well prepared for for the pandemic. And the second is Vietnamese people are less reluctant at taking the vaccine. They are more aware, they are more afraid of the disease,
Right.
of how the
Right.
disease can kill
Right.
than the
Yeah.
vaccine.
So there's not, I mean, there are people who can decide not to get a vaccine. It's not that everybody is required to get a vaccine, but I think nearly everybody decides to get a vaccine.
Yes, in Vietnam, vaccine is not compulsory, but I think when you want to go to travel by plane or
Right, then you need to have it.
you need to have the vaccine. And
Right.
also in some events, you need to show your certificate.
Yeah, okay.
But still, some people choose not to vaccinate it, and it is still a choice that you can make. And yeah.
Right, right. And that doesn't seem to have divided Vietnamese society. Like in the United States, it has divided people a lot. The anti-vaccine. Yeah. So I just, I'm one more reason I'm happy to be here in Vietnam, I guess. And I guess perhaps we should close with that. COVID isn't over, but we're hoping that the worst is over and things will continue to improve and people will continue to be, protected and healthy. And Viet Thanh, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight and co-hosting this talk with me. It's been very nice. So I guess we'll say goodbye now. And thanks again, everybody. And if you like what you hear, put that in the comments. If you have questions for either me or Viet Thanh about COVID, put them in the comments and we'll answer them. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.